what I enjoyed most about that bill is how willing some of the other members of the sporting community were to throw you under the bus.
Yes, yeah.
That was just fun for me to watch.
Well, that's pretty much my career.
It was singled out that most of the things that split off all these licenses into several categories were your idea.
Yes, yeah. Oh, well, consistency is never important at the legislature. Come on.
That's right. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. The Maine legislature has finally completed its work, except for maybe a few vetoes it has to override. It was a wild and woolly finish that included a 3-day shutdown of state government while wrangling over a budget. But, except for the usual scraps over money and unexplainable vetoes, the legislature actually finished much of its work early this year. And that gives us a chance to go full circle on a radio show that we did back in January. George Smith has been a recurring guest on the show over the years. He was executive director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine for 17 years and also writes and blogs about hunting and fishing in the great outdoors. George has a history of getting legislators to introduce bills for him. There were 11 this year, mostly designed to provoke the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife into doing stuff. We previewed those bills on this show 7 months ago. Today, let's find out what happened to them. It's all brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Now, welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Always fun, Bob.
We started off this year by going over the bills you were going to have sponsored into the legislature.
Yes.
And this is, of course, a citizen legislature where any citizen can come to a legislator and say, hey, would you put this bill in for me?
Yes.
And you abused that.
I did. I probably was a bit ambitious by putting in 11 bills, but I did.
You did. and all with different sponsors, so you didn't overburden one.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we think that some of these are sponsored by the legislators themselves. In reality, they're George Smith bills, and much to my surprise, we didn't kill them all.
Well, as I was getting ready for the show, Bob, I decided I'm really quite pleased with the results of quite a few of these bills. And as you know, sometimes I put them in to provoke the Fish and Wildlife Department from acting.
Which, of course, they love.
And we did that on a number of things. So we'll talk about those.
Mm-hmm. Well, first one I got on the list is LD 98. So that was all about turkeys and turkey hunting. And
well, I'm an avid turkey hunter, and I get a lot of complaints from landowners. It's my secret weapon. Everybody wants me to come hunt their land to get rid of turkeys. And so I wanted to increase the bag limit, get rid of the fee, because only 16,000 of us are hunting turkeys. And I'd like to get more people into that, because we do have some problems in a lot of areas. And then I wanted online tagging, because some people, you have to drive 30 miles to tag a stupid turkey and pay $2. And I think guys just drive home. But the department didn't like any of that. So what we did, we turned around and looked at their draft management plan, the new plan for turkeys, and we gave them what they asked for in the plan, which was the authority to set the bag limits and the seasons and have special hunts. Right now, all that's in statute. Now they're going to have the authority. So if they see areas where there's a lot of turkeys, they can increase the bag limit in those districts. If there's a problem on a farm, they can schedule a special hunt. So and they ended up, after opposing my bill, getting up at the work session and telling you, yeah, we really would like all this. And so we got it for them.
Certainly taking it out of statute would be something they'd really love.
Yeah.
Now, you've been around long enough to know why it was in statute in the first place, and I'm assuming that the legislature at various times over the years hasn't necessarily trusted IF&W to follow the will of the legislature.
That's an understatement.
Yes. So we put it in statute so they'd have to follow it rather than rule.
And that was my strategy for a long time at the Sportsmen's Alliance, to put everything into law, because then they'd have to do it.
Yeah.
But in this case, I really think, knowing the Wildlife Division, that they're going to expand opportunities to hunt turkeys.
Yeah, and we really have come a long way in saying that, in fact, we wrote it in the statute last session, where this is how we're going to manage wildlife with a preference on hunting.
Yes.
If you're going to do that, you need a lot of dexterity and flexibility.
That's right.
The population's ebb and flow, seasons can be bad. You can have a bad winter. So the department needs to be able to react to that, and you can't change the statute fast enough.
Yeah, and we have that example in deer along the coast and on some of the islands. The department is really ahead of even the folks on the islands in trying to reduce Lyme disease and deal with the overpopulation of deer. So I think they'll do the same thing with turkeys.
One of the most fascinating parts of that discussion, this wasn't one of your bills, was in the Jonesport area.
Yes.
It's like we've had bill after bill about there's not enough deer in Washington County.
Yes.
But in certain areas there are too many.
Yeah.
We don't have enough, but what we do have is all in the wrong place.
Yeah, they're all in the blueberry grounds eating the plants, and that is a problem.
Backyard begonias.
Those bills didn't pass, but I think that's a place the department has to look at special hunts and helping the blueberry growers.
And in fact, that's exactly what they said they're going to do. They're going to take it more on a town-by-town basis.
Yeah.
They pretty much regulate the numbers of a harvest by wildlife management area,
Right.
which is a relatively sizable area.
Yes.
You take the deer population around Machias or Jonesport,
Yes.
it's really concentrated in small places.
Yeah.
So you have a local annoyance.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to look at some of these at dividing those districts.
Yeah.
Because they are huge. Now, in my district, 16, last year they didn't go up in permits at all, and I questioned that because our population is going up. This year they went up almost 400%. It was the biggest increase of any district. And, I mean, to me, that is not good management. I mean, we should have gone up gradually rather than up 400% in 1 year. Didn't make a lot of sense. But we do have a lot of deer in my district.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that about how to you have to manage species at a pretty local level, and that takes a lot of intense management on the part of the department. You got to know what you're doing.
Yes, and that's the other thing. I mean, we don't have a huge staff, and they don't get into every wildlife management district every year to see what's happening with every game animal. They just can't.
Well, yeah, and we're not going to pay for that. We don't have enough money to send that many researchers into the field to study where are the critters and what are we going to do about it.
They just need a subgroup of 6 hunters in each district, and we'll tell them what they need to do.
That's the problem is the hunters want to manage it.
Yes, I think that's
yeah. And no one ever wants to underharvest.
No, absolutely.
Second bill, LD 187, Commission to Simplify Fishing Rules, basically.
Well, that's an ongoing problem, and I've tried it before. Sam used to have a process where we did that with the department's participation, and it was quite successful. We changed a lot of laws and rules over time, but this time the department promised the committee that this year they're going to simplify the rules. And so my bill died, but my problem with that is the department created all the rules. I'm not sure they know how to simplify it. I would like to see a bigger commission with outside people helping them to look at, because right now they manage every water as if it's unique. So there's all these rules for every different water. And some of us think that could be really simplified. But we'll see what they do, and they'll report to you in January, and we'll find out if they simplified it or not.
Oh, gee. Studies and reports may be the slowest and most ineffective way to get anything done in the legislature. But that's just a consequence of Maine's style of government. With a part-time, term-limited legislature, there aren't a lot of legislators with any long-term experience. So if an issue comes up that requires more than a superficial understanding, often some kind of study is created, and often that includes stakeholders, and often nothing happens. There are bunches of ways to do a study, and even more ways to follow them up. We'll study studies in just a moment as Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine continues on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. My guest is George Smith, longtime advocate for Maine sportsmen, now a writer, blogger, and occasional agitator. He agitated with 11 bills in front of the legislature this session, and we're discussing what happened to them. And unfortunately, that brings up the topic of studies, which is often what happens when the legislature can't immediately figure something out. By and large, the work of the legislature is to react to bills proposed by individual legislators, and these need to be dealt with during a short time period. It's very difficult to take the long view on issues, especially if that requires institutional memory and experience, which is mostly gone due to term limits. So there are lots of different types of studies: working groups, stakeholder groups, task forces, legislative studies, blue ribbon commissions. Some of those work, some of those don't. You've been around. What's your experience?
I've served on so many task forces where we had wonderful reports, and they were put on the shelf, and that was the end of it.
Yep.
And that's why I had a bill in to do another hatchery commission. We worked 4 years, issued a terrific set of recommendations with national help, a national company that worked with us in 2002, and they haven't done most of it. So I tried to get another hatchery commission. That failed. The department did give you a report on what they'd accomplished of the recommendations from 2002, and they did a few things. But my concern there was that almost all our money goes to growing fish, stocking fish, researching, and managing hatchery fish. And we're neglecting our native fisheries. I'd like to see more balance. Didn't have any luck with that. But
yeah, that was a not to pass.
Yeah, but you've served on task forces too. You know how that goes.
When I was relatively new in the legislative process, I wanted to serve on these because I wanted to study long-term stuff.
Yeah.
And then I served on some, and I said, why did I do that?
Yes.
We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Or we did do something, it ended up on a shelf.
Yeah. I was actually pleased with some of them. We had a public lands task force once with Governor Baldacci organized, and I thought we came up with a lot of good recommendations, but most of them didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think I've realized that the failures of some of these groups, if you do a legislative study, it has to happen during a certain period with the right people on it.
Yes.
John Martin, the legendary John Martin, said, never do one in the second session because all the experts you put on it aren't coming back.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you've done this great work, but then it has no champions.
Yes.
Those people have termed out, and so, yes, you got the right people, but they're not here.
Well, bringing up John reminds me of how damaging term limits have been. I mean, look at our Fish and Wildlife Committee. There were 7 new members with no historical knowledge of any of these issues, so everything took twice as long. Mm-hmm. And, it's just so frustrating. People still think term limits is working great. It is a horrible mistake. Mm-hmm. Really is.
Yeah, I mean, you had relatively new members of the committee. You had at least one chair who knew squat, and maybe 2. And I'm not saying which one is which.
We were lucky you were there, Bob. I'll say that.
There is the idea of a working group. That is where a department basically gets together some of the stakeholders, but they run the process and try to get feedback. Those work pretty well so long as the working group suggests doing what the department already wants to do.
And that's what I'm asking the department with this simplifying fishing rules. Get some outside people in there, like the Sportsman's Alliance, Audubon, different groups that are involved in fishing in some way, because he'll get different opinions than the staff.
Yep. The one kind that it really does not work is the stakeholder group.
Yes.
You get stakeholders, all of whom have a place at the table because they are involved with the issue, and it's turf protection for 6 meetings, 7 meetings. If you can make it last a full year and do dozens of meetings, they'll finally get past that and start to be a team.
Yes. The ones that I found most valuable was when you'd hire somebody nationally that would bring in what other states are doing, and we'd learn a lot and see other opportunities. Those worked really well as far as coming up with good recommendations. I'm not saying any of them ever were implemented, but at least I felt that we did a good job in doing that.
Were you on Governor Baldacci's task force to look at the consolidation of natural resource agents?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Yes.
Me too.
And I had an axe to grind.
Yeah, you did.
I wanted to protect my Fish and Wildlife Department. Yeah.
But we looked at what other states were doing.
Yes.
Figured out that none of them really saved any money by consolidating.
Right.
So ultimately, we didn't do it either.
Yeah.
We met a lot. That's
right.
The governor at Baldacci wanted to consolidate.
He really wanted to.
He wanted to bad.
Yes.
One of his staff members, who eventually chaired that task force, said, well, let me try to get the stakeholder buy-in first. Didn't work.
No.
Crashed and burned. We wasted our time.
We pay for that department. That's our department.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want anybody messing with it.
As a matter of fact, we won another boutique department for forestry.
I can remember when the landowner relations program went from Fish and Wildlife to the Department of Ag and Public Lands, and then later they gave it back to Fish and Wildlife. I mean, it went back and forth. But and then we did some combinations there. But not Fish and Wildlife.
And furthermore, we're just horribly resistant to change.
Change? Oh, we hate change.
I mean, this is Maine, man.
No.
I like it the way it's been.
Yes.
Don't touch a thing.
Yes.
And so I don't care what experts from away say or what the good experiences were elsewhere.
That's right.
We're not doing it.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
So commissions, working groups, legislative studies. You had 2 bills in to do that, but I know we ought not to pass one. I think we did.
Well, the Hatchery Commission didn't go.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
Well, there was the simplified fishing rules, and then there was the
simplified fishing.
Right, and then salmonids, which is basically one that you had done back in 2002. Right. And this would look again at how do we best manage our cold water fish and preserve our heritage fish, not just hatch them.
Right.
Yeah.
And look at the budget and see where we're spending all our money. It's like you pass a supplemental budget, the legislature, that gave $5 million to fish hatcheries and $3 million to fighting the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
Now, that seemed like a wrong priorities to me.
Yeah.
And I'm a fisherman, but holy cow.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. I think I voted to kill the bill. I usually do on your bills.
Yeah. No, that's not true.
But, that one had some merit, but it didn't look like this was going to work this time because
No.
Too much resistance.
Yeah, and I was fine with that.
You had a bill. Well, this was an entertaining one, the exotic wildlife bill.
Yes.
That one took us for a wild ride.
Senator Seaway got really fired up about it, and so he kept it alive. It almost died 3 or 4 different times, and eventually we got what I wanted, which was to increase the penalties and emphasize that you have to get a permit for a lot of these critters, and if they escape your house, you need to let people know.
Yeah.
And I had all these examples. You know, you wake up and there's a python in your shower because it escaped your neighbor's house 3 months ago and she didn't tell anybody. Or you look in the living room and a python is eating a parakeet, which happened to a lady. So now the penalties are going to be severe if you don't do this. So I hope that will compel people to do the right thing. Get your permits when you need to. Let people know if the animal gets out.
Yeah, let's back up and explain the issue a little more in depth. I mean, exotic animals are really defined. There's native critters. You're not allowed to keep a raccoon as a pet.
Right.
You need certain permits in order to keep stuff.
These are basically non-native animals.
Yeah. And they can be classified a number of different ways. They are a risk to people, a risk to the environment if they get out and spread.
Yes.
If they carry diseases. So there's a lot of different risks. If you're going to have one, you need a permit from the department.
Right. Well, there are 3 lists, and as you know, you redid the whole law last session, but there are 3 lists. One, animals require a permit, animals you can have without a permit, and animals you can't have.
Yeah, right.
And one of the challenges now is that we used to think none of these animals could live in Maine if they got what, and now they can because the climate is changing. It's warmer.
There are opossums here.
An exotic turtle has been established in Camden. You know, so we have to be a little more careful these days. I don't think anybody wants rattlesnakes and pythons out in the woods. I'm
no,
sure.
I know it. Yeah, look at what Florida's going through with pythons.
Oh, yeah.
In the Everglades. So we went through all that.
Yeah.
It's the dangerous ones that we really got tangled up on because not only do you need a special permit in order to own a gaboon viper or king cobra, but if it escapes, something better happen pretty quick.
Yes.
And the penalties for either not having a permit or for not reporting an escape were actually pretty meager.
They were very meager. And so there was no real incentive to go ahead and do it. And I'm not aware that anybody was ever prosecuted for these cases we know about. But now there's some really good penalties, and I think you've inspired the department to get serious about this.
You'd have to refresh my memory a little bit about how these lists were developed. There's you can have a list of things that are prohibited, or you can have a list of things that are permitted. We sort of went the permission list.
The permission list is very big. It's like 3,000 critters that you can have.
Yeah.
And the prohibited list is only about a half a dozen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, I'd like to see a little better balance. But I think the department, Jim Connolly, the director, and Judy Camuso, they're doing a great job on this.
They are.
They are taking it seriously, and they're working real hard on these lists, which are not finalized yet. So I have a lot of faith that they're going to get the job done.
I do too. I've got a lot of confidence in the 2 people you mentioned. I'll single them out: Judy Camuso and
Jim Connolly.
And Jim Connolly. They've been doing, in my opinion, a fantastic job. They arrived at our committee prepared,
and I agree.
Yeah, so it was great to have them there.
Yeah.
So exotic wildlife actually passed, and we did boost the penalties if you basically abuse this law.
Yes.
Yeah. My guest is George Smith, longtime advocate for hunters and anglers, as well as a writer and blogger. George instigated 11 bills in the Maine legislature this year. We previewed those bills in January. This is the postmortem. Most of George's bills die, and no bill died faster than George's proposal to extend the fall fishing season. We hold a funeral for that bill next when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns in a moment on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. My guest is George Smith, who returns to the show to talk about some special wildlife-related bills that were considered by the legislature this year. The bills are special because George wrote them. One of the bills that George had high hopes for was a bill to extend the fall fishing season. Now, since George isn't actually in the legislature, you had to find a sponsor for this bill that we so quickly killed.
Well, that was Representative Black, and what happened is because of last year's drought, we didn't get to fish much. The fish didn't come up the rivers yet, and so, you know, we have to stop the end of September. I put in a bill to extend that season through October. It's all catch and release fishing, recognizing that fall fishing is not what it used to be because of the climate change and the warmer water. And the department killed it, of course. But then just a month later, they asked you to extend the ice fishing season in the same region.
Two different things.
No, it isn't. What's the difference? It's the same places. They're going to let them ice fish longer, but not let us fly fish longer.
Oh, come on. You were there as we tore apart your bill. And even your compatriots in the sporting community said, no, this is a bad idea. I mean, there's nobody that liked that bill but you.
Well, I think the opponents were more concerned about the native brook trout coming up the rivers and spawning, and I get that. I'm with them on that. So, yeah.
I mean, you could be fishing for salmon, but treading on trout eggs.
Yes.
And that was the real issue is in order to get in the river and fish, when some fish are spawning, you actually have the potential of doing damage to the next generation of fish.
The real tragedy is that the biologists are telling us now because of the drought, the brook trout didn't get to spawn. We lost a whole year's class of brook trout last fall, which is bad.
Yep, but climate change is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese.
So I'll concede you probably did the right thing on my fall fishing bill.
That one wasn't just a no, that was a hell no.
Yeah, I just come home and fish for bass.
Yeah, there you go. Another one we took a wild ride on was game dinners. And I did have Senator Saviello on the show earlier.
Oh, great.
He was on a few weeks ago, and we just talked at length about the bill.
He was just, I mean, you know Tom. He doesn't give up on anything. I gave up on it way back, and he kept at it, and he got what we wanted, which the game dinners are technically illegal. You can't charge people for eating game, or you can't buy game meat. But there's all kinds of them, and the department, as they told you, wink and nod and let people do it and say, oh, you're charging for the potatoes and not the meat and this and that. Well, that's ridiculous. So I tried to make it legal. We didn't in the statute, but they issued a written memo recently outlining what you had to do to make the dinners legal, so they are going to be legal now. You can't buy the meat.
Right.
You charge people for the event, not specifically to eat the meat. So they've clarified it in a wonderful memo, and that's all I hope to achieve.
Yeah.
And I give Senator Savio all the credit for that.
I have to admit, I came into that bill stupid. I saw it exactly the same way you did. Yeah. And, I challenged the department several times. You're just winking and nodding.
Yes.
And then slowly but surely it came to me.
Yeah.
No, geez, the department is right. It's just a matter of interpretation.
Yeah.
The problem is not that they're doing the law wrong. It's that they're not telling people how they're doing it.
Yes.
So it always has been that you can't sell game. That's been a fundamental principle ever since we market hunted caribou out of the state.
That's right.
So, we don't sell game, but we do encourage game consumption.
Yes.
I mean, and you can swap game.
Yes.
If I got some deer I'm not going to eat, I can give it to you.
Well, and all these events get their meat for free.
For free. It has to be donated, legally, lawfully killed, and donated. That is the only way this meat can come into a public event of some kind.
Right, and then you have to cook it and serve it at that event. You can't sell it later or anything else. That's the way it has to be. So that's good. We got it all squared away.
Comprehensive hunting license.
Oh, I've been trying for a decade to get that because it's so aggravating to hunters. All the different permits. We get the hunting license, and then we have to keep buying permits and permits and permits. I just wanted a chance, and I got a great response from hunters that they'd pay more just to be done with it. You can hunt and what I like about it is that it will encourage people to hunt other critters. Like maybe they'll go turkey hunting one Saturday, but they're not going to pay $20 to do it, so they don't do it. Maybe they'll go rabbit hunting one winter morning with a friend, stuff like that. But
I think what I enjoyed most about that bill is how willing some of the other members of the sporting community were to throw you under the bus.
Yes, yeah.
That was just fun for me to watch.
Well, that's pretty much my career.
It was singled out that most of the things that split off all these licenses into several categories were your idea.
Yes, Oh, well, consistency is never important at the legislature. Come on.
That's right.
But the department, Bill Swan does a great job, head of licensing, and he's always made the point that it's going to cost them money, and it will. I mean, I don't want to price it so high that we don't get a good purchase, a good number of purchases. So that's the problem. They're making a lot of money in all these permits, and they can't give it up.
Well, furthermore, as you well know, the department is chronically underfunded.
Yes.
We paid for some of our educational programming that we passed last time by cutting wardens this time.
Yes.
So, I mean, we can't keep doing that.
No.
So, anytime it's going to cost the department money, the legislature is going to blink.
Well, I do want to say, and we got a few more my bills to go through, but I thought the committee did a super job in restoring cuts that the governor made the department make in their budget. A lot of important things were cut, and you put them all back in. And as far as I know, as the budget's going along, we have really restored almost all of that, didn't we?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the committee certainly squawked, but I have to give full credit to the Appropriations Committee who listened.
Yes.
And, those guys, I never want to be in appropriations.
Oh, I know.
You have no life for 6 months, and then everybody blames you for everything.
Yes, yes. But I thought when we went over there and testified against the department's budget, we got a terrific, you were there, great response.
Yeah.
And I was very pleased. And then the committee, they did restore a lot of it, and then went back over to appropriations again. So I was happy with that.
Well, some of the governor's cuts really, in all honesty, I don't mean to throw them under the bus, but some of them didn't make sense because it wasn't even state taxpayer money.
No, it didn't save any money.
There were federal funds there that we would get anyway if we simply used it to pay for some of our biologists.
It didn't save money.
So cuts that don't save anything but cut your capacity to accomplish things for wildlife in the sporting community, that just didn't make sense. And I'm glad the Appropriations Committee listened to that.
Yeah.
But the comprehensive hunting license is something that really does make some sense. I'm not sure how we can get there from here because we really can't lose the revenue, but we do need to simplify it. One of the reasons we have a lot of different licenses is because you can measure the hunting results with the tags, with who buys what license.
But I'll compare it to duck hunting. All they do is ask you, did you duck hunt last year? And then you can duck hunt this year without the permit that's required. If you're a first-time duck hunter, you have to buy this $2 permit.
Right, yeah.
Well, if you say you've been hunting, you don't have to buy it. And so that seems to work.
Well, some of it's the bureaucratic mentality that's actually justified. We have big game, and we have game that's not big game. So it's turkey, moose, bear, deer. That stuff we measure, so you have to tag your turkeys but not your grouse.
I'm telling you, you don't have to charge a permit fee to figure out how many people are hunting turkeys. Just ask. In this day and age, with the technology, there's a lot better ways. That's why I wanted the online tagging of turkeys. I think they'd get better results. They don't seem to think so. But there aren't that many turkey tagging stations. And I didn't abolish those. There'd still be those. But also, if you're not near one, you could just go on a computer or phone in, tell them I got a turkey.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays you can do so much with a cell phone camera.
Well,
you just do it right there in the field. Here's my Tom.
I can remember when Paul Jakes was a legislator, and he went elk hunting in Colorado, and when he got home, they called to see if he got one. That was it. The processes that Sam used to have in which we reviewed the hunting and trapping laws and rules and the fishing laws and rules was a good one. And if the department doesn't get it done, I think I would just encourage these other groups to go ahead and do it yourself. Come up with some proposals. Because as you said, sometimes it's better to get out of the department, get some thoughtful people together and see what we can do better.
Yeah. That would actually be a convenient thing. What happens is everybody comes in piecemeal and gives their own opinion.
Yeah.
But there aren't a lot of good forums for discussion about how can we do this better as a sporting group, for instance.
That's right. So, see, now I know you're getting out of the legislature, but you could lead some of these groups.
What part of out? It wasn't clear. Not just out, but far away. There's national parks out there I haven't visited, so if anyone needs me, forget it. If the voice you hear is familiar, it's possibly because he's been on this show a half a dozen times. George Smith was executive director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine for 17 years. He's still an advocate on hunting and fishing issues, and he instigated 11 bills in the legislature this year. We previewed them in January in the show, and today we're reviewing what happened to them now that the legislature is done for the year. Most of George's bills, we killed. We altered a few, and one big bill will come up again next year. That one is all about protecting our heritage fishing waters. Stand by for a progress report. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I've got George Smith back on today's show. George likes to agitate on hunting and fishing issues, and every year he enlists some co-conspirators in the legislature to put in some bills for him. There were 11 bills this year. We killed most of them, changed a few, and carried one over to next year. That bill is all about our heritage fish waters, which is important, George.
Well, I think the important part here is that I wanted to extend the protection in the heritage ponds. They're protected. No stalking, no live fish as bait. But the tributaries are not. So I put in a bill to protect the tributaries. And then the Audubon does these remote pond surveys to add waters to the protected heritage list, and they're not putting them on like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took that process and looked at how to speed that up. So I put in 2 bills. Russell Black sponsored them both. The department stepped up thanks to your committee.
Mm-hmm.
They opposed it. They don't need any direction. But the committee was really strong on this. And so the department really was compelled to come back and say, we are going to do all this in the next 9 months,
mm-hmm.
and we'll come back in next February and let you know that we got it done. And the committee even then carried forward one of the bills.
That's right.
If they don't get it done, you're going to be able to act.
That's right. You do it or we will.
So, and the commissioner, he seemed to not, he really didn't want to put this in law, and I'll respect that. And we're giving him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the fisheries new director very much, Francis Brodigan.
Mm-hmm.
I think he really does want to do this, so we'll see if they get it done.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of him. I really wish and hope for the best out of the department on its fishery side.
Well, one thing I like is I was pretty sure Francis wanted to go here,
mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of resistance. The regions are autonomous, and some of them don't want to do this and that. You gave him a compelling reason now to go, I think, where he wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he can say, look, the legislature, is expecting us to do this now, guys. We got to get it done. Yeah. So that, I think, maybe have been the best thing you did.
There is an interesting dichotomy within the department, and you're well aware of it. We manage species on the wildlife side. We manage regions on the fishery side.
Yes.
So sometimes that dynamic doesn't work as well as it could.
Well, you even had a bill to reorganize fisheries more like wildlife. But I think over time, if the commissioner backs up Francis, he will get a lot of that done. Mm-hmm. So that we have some consistency statewide in the way we manage things.
Yeah, the problem is we're going to have to give him some time to do it, and we tend to be an impatient bunch.
Well, yeah, you're going to be long gone.
That's right.
I think I'm going to retire with you, Bob, so we'll see.
Yeah. You had a bill in to dedicate more of the revenue from the moose lottery, moose proceeds, to the research, moose research.
Yes, that was an astonishing result, because in the new draft management plan for moose, there's several goals which indicate they need more money for research, more for this, more for that. So I had put in a bill last session to dedicate 1/3 of the money that they raised from the lottery and permit sales to research and management. They defeated that. So this time I put it in to spend all the money just to provoke them from telling you how much they need. I did not expect what they said. They said they do not need more money.
Yeah. Now, you say they defeated it, but really it's we, the legislature, and me in particular, that defeated it.
Well, because the commission, the department, if they stand up and tell you they don't need more money, why would you give them more money?
Yeah.
And those goals are still in the plan that says they need more money. So I don't know where we're going on that.
Yeah. I'll have to reread that, because, yes, you may need more money, but that's time sensitive. So you may have some research now, and then in the future you need more money to follow up on your research.
Well, I'm a big fan of Judy Camuso, and she was very upfront with you that they take a lot of that moose money and they spend it on other things, even birds.
Yep. Which, by the way, I'm all in favor of.
Well, you'd be surprised, but I am too. Yeah. But the problem is that if they need money for moose, they have it already from moose hunters. They really do. They're taking in millions every year from us. So, and I would like to see, the other part of this for me is that they're doing great research, but they're doing nothing to save the moose. We got no plan other than our moose biologist, Lee Canner, who's phenomenal, says that the moose population, the density will get low enough, it'll stop being a problem. The ticks won't kill them all. Well, that's no good. I don't want that. I want to save these moose somehow.
Well, we stock fish. Maybe we should stock moose. I'm trying to think outside the box.
Don't even suggest it, Bob. They'll do it. Don't even suggest it.
I was fascinated by when Lee came in and talked a little bit about what they're seeing with their research.
Yes.
And they're seeing some dramatic things around the state that I don't think they recognized early on. And that is, ticks are a problem. Winter tick is a problem everywhere the moose are.
Yes.
But some areas are suffering more than others, and they don't really know why.
I know.
And the secret to how you treat this in the future may be revealed if they can figure out why there are regional differences.
Well, he's been talking about moose densities, but there are districts where the density was not high, and they're having deaths from ticks.
Yeah.
And I asked him a while back. We used to have moose in Mount Vernon. The habitat hasn't changed. The moose are gone. And I can't believe it was ticks, because there weren't that many moose.
Yeah, probably just night hunting.
No comment. So I don't know, but it's clearly a problem, and we don't have a plan yet, other than to continue to check and see how many are dying every winter.
Well, to the extent that we've really just started getting serious about moose research, to have a plan without sufficient research, you could be throwing a lot of money in the wrong direction if you haven't got it figured out.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to rush them on that.
Yeah.
They do need to understand why are moose dying faster in one place than another when the ticks are the same.
Yeah. Well, Lee is right on top of the research.
Yeah.
So I think it took him years to get the money he needed. New Hampshire started way before us.
Yep.
But now they're working together. And Vermont's a little involved too. So I think things are going in the right direction on research.
We talk about him being a good researcher, which he absolutely is. But what they do for research when they go out and count moose, they get in a helicopter where you can see directly down. I mean, you're right in the bubble. You're just over the tree tops. And they're going as fast as they can over these transects. You could die.
Yes.
And I know his wife and kids.
And I do too. It's day after day after day he's doing this.
It's like I'm thinking, are you crazy?
I know.
But that's what they're doing on behalf of moose research.
Yes. When they get the collars on, they have this Australia company that comes, jumps out of the chopper, wrestles the thing to the ground, puts the collars on,
Yeah.
Holy cow. It's incredible.
So this is like first-rate research they're doing.
Yes.
And hopefully it will lead us to a solution about how to stabilize the herd versus the winter tick.
And I can tell you, he has a lot of credibility at the legislature.
Well, he does.
If I put in a bill he doesn't like, it's dead.
It's dead.
He's going to come and tell you, and fact, I can't even argue with him.
I'll even call you up, George, and say, don't bother to come in. Your bill's already dead.
Yeah. So this moose bill, I really thought would be helping them to get some money that they said they needed. So I was really surprised when they said they didn't need more money.
Yep.
But they didn't get more money.
So that was the 11th of 11 bills George Smith forced into the Maine legislature this year. Realizing that all you have to do to force a bill into the legislature is to get a member to sponsor it, we've now reviewed all of George's bills, most of which we killed. George has been an activist for hunters and anglers for decades, so he's got quite a perspective on the history of wildlife issues. Coming up, we'll take a quick look at some of the noteworthy bills he didn't do. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. The Maine legislature has now pretty much finished up for the year. Faithful listeners of the show know that I chair the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee, which means that George Smith is almost always sitting in front of me, telling me what to do on hunting and angling bills. He's a longtime advocate for hunters and anglers, so I get him on the show once or twice a year. Not because he's right about everything, but because he's opinionated about everything, and that's more fun. So what other bills tickled your fancy this year?
One of the bills you did pass that is still generating lots of comments is letting the Amish wear red instead of orange. And I thought those young men that came, the Amish, were awesome.
Yep.
I thought the committee was very respectful. The department surprised me by supporting it. And the difficulty I saw was there's no definition of red. You amended to say bright red. Well, what's that? And the department said they would not start asking people about their religion.
Nor should they.
No. And the bill really, it doesn't say Amish. It said if your religion prevents you from wearing orange, you can wear red. And I didn't have any problem with it because I think we've done so much to make hunting safe today. And we even changed the law, so you have to see a whole deer now. You can't just see a white flag and shoot. That I don't think it's going to be any problem.
No, ultimately, that's where I came down. I was skeptical at first.
Yeah.
Because as Don Kleiner from the Professional Maine Guides came in and said, listen, because of our laws right now, we have one of the safest sports in America. Very few people are injured by hunting these days. You're much worse off on an ATV or a snowmobile than you are carrying a gun in the woods.
Right.
So why are you going to mess with that?
Yes.
And the committee, I think, took that very seriously.
They did.
But on the other hand, you have this small group of guys who really want to hunt in a way that it comports with their religion.
Yes.
Could we do a carve-out for them? The answer ultimately was yes.
Yes.
Now, just because you're a religion and believe certain things doesn't mean the state's going to let you do it.
Yes.
You can't marry a 14-year-old bride
or
have multiple wives.
I stepped up to suggest that I was in the Church of Sunday Hunting.
Yeah.
And we were required to hunt on Sundays. That didn't go anyplace.
No. In fact, in your church, I would encourage you to go out in camo and hunt.
When I researched it, I found that a lot of Amish, even in Maine, wear orange.
Oh, yeah.
It's just this one sect. in Aroostook County. But I think we should respect their religion, and I don't really. I think you all came to that conclusion. But it was a divided vote, 7-5, I think.
Yeah, it was.
And what else? We had a lot of deer bills. Most of them didn't go anyplace.
Baiting is the one I found most fascinating. The whole debate over baiting deer has become fascinating because there's that gray area where you're growing a food plot.
Yes. Well, here's what you can do. You can go out to my tree stand and plant something in front of it and sit there until the deer comes to eat it. I can't plant it at home and bring it and put it there. I have to plant it there. What's the difference, really? You're baiting a deer in, whether you planted it there or you planted it at home. I didn't see the difference, and I see a lot of people doing it, and getting into trouble, and other states, Michigan, all over Canada does it.
Well, there are some states who have way more deer than they want.
Well, yes.
I mean, they're just eating the backyard begonias in every backyard.
And don't you think that's where it gets defeated every year? The department says they're going to have to reduce permits, more deer are going to be killed. It's going to be a big problem.
Well, I think it came down to a number of things. When you are doing something in the landscape that concentrates deer, you're concentrating ticks, you're driving deer into traffic. I heard lots of stories out of Eastport, including some from friends who have no idea what we do in the legislature, who said they're hitting deer all the time because people are backyard feeding, and there's only one road into town.
Yes, exactly right.
So there are some problems with putting down a fast, concentrated food supply. If you're growing it and it's part of the landscape, I think the deer probably can get accustomed to coming in and out of there without concentrating. But if you put it down a pile of corn, problem.
Well, I hunt a blueberry farm, which has blueberries and raspberries, and as you can expect, they really welcome me because the deer do a lot of damage. And I take new hunters. That's where I took Deidre Fleming, the outdoor writer who had never hunted, and she got a deer. And I love taking new hunters out there. And the farmers welcome us, and we're hunting over bait. We're watching the blueberries. And so I didn't see the big difference, but I understand the department's concerned this could go crazy.
Well, they have the additional problem is, you remember how you used to jack a deer?
No, I don't remember. No, how was that, Bob?
You're from Mount Vernon, remember this?
Oh, yeah, I might have heard about it.
Yeah, right. But I mean, you used to use jacklights, flashlights, headlights, whatever, and shine it on a field till something glowed.
Yeah, they're all out in the field at night.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's too easy for a warden to see you do that.
Yes.
So the new way, and don't try this at home, is really to hunt over bait at night.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and this is just a fictional story, of course.
Of course,
I might have had a stand years ago in my bog, and I might have put apples out where the deer trail goes by. And I might have gone and sat there day after day after day and never saw a deer. They always came at night and ate the apples. The apples were gone every morning. And so even then, I might have learned that baiting isn't that easy.
No.
I gave that up. That was a long, long time ago. But it isn't even that easy to do. But I think the department was right. We don't need to do that.
We really don't. No. I mean, we have a good extensive time period for hunting in Maine.
Yes.
We have a finite resource. I mean, this is not Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Pennsylvania's got more deer than they can handle.
That's right.
But in Maine, we have...
Well, it's like you had the bill on two bills to restrict antlers to 3 sides, 3 points on a side. And the reason that doesn't go is because most hunters are happy to get a deer. A lot of us like to get a big buck, but that's not going to be our focus as a state.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to... At this point, no one's coming to Maine to do our spectacular sporting hunting on deer because there's big deer just about everywhere along the middle Atlantic coast.
Well, then you had a lot of moose bills. And I was real pleased you gave us old guys moose permits if we'd been in forever and still didn't get one. I think 65 and over. If you've been in a certain number of years and hadn't got one, you're going to get one.
If you are the most unlucky SOB in the world and you have never been able to hunt, finally, when you get old enough, you can go out and do it.
It's like the any deer permits. They wanted to give them to, I think, 65 and over, and I was able to inform the committee that a few years ago they passed a law that if you're 100 or more, you get an any deer permit. That's a law. I don't think anybody's ever taken advantage of it.
The requirements are too high.
I think so, yeah.
Well, George, I think we passed more of your bills than I expected.
Yeah, well, but got good results, even when we didn't in a lot of cases, and the department has a lot of work to do to follow up, and I like the committee. I appreciated the chance to put in bills and work with the committee. I mean, as you know, legislators are good people. They really are. I mean, they're here for good reasons, but the process is difficult.
Well, it's supposed to be difficult.
Yeah,
This is how we settle our differences without guns. So it is supposed to be messy.
Yes, and it is.
Yeah, because the fact is, if we all agree, then I don't have to be here.
Yes, yeah. And the process is set up so that the most bills fail, and most hunting and fishing bills did fail. And it takes some time. And I keep telling people, you get a little bit each year, and you come back. You just can't, if you can be consistently here, you can move your goals ahead little by little by little.
Yeah.
You rarely get it all at once.
There are very few home runs in the legislature.
Right.
There's a lot of bunt singles.
Yes, yeah. And a lot of bills are repeated year after year after year.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff.
Until we're all sick of them.
Yeah, yeah. So you're going to come back as a lobbyist, right?
Not a chance in hell.
Because next time you could lobby for my
Not
bills.
a chance in hell.
Well, I got to say, you've been a spectacular legislator. Honestly, we're going to really miss you.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I know you're not going to miss us.
I was trying to think of a way to say that politely. I'm glad you're going to miss me. I'm not sure I'm going to miss it. That's a wrap. George Smith has been my guest. He's a longtime advocate for hunters and anglers, and he instigated 11 bills in the Maine legislature this year. We previewed those bills in January and followed up today with a review of what happened, which is mostly that we killed his bills. But they sparked some good discussions anyway. That's actually what the legislature does. Legislators submit ideas, they get batted around, they mostly get killed, but the good ones go on to become law. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Join me again every Saturday at 9, Sunday at 8, and online afterwards at 929theticket.com. This is Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.